Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff. There's no Alex today. It's just Jeff. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We're also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. What do we have on today's show? On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping the Week 16 action, getting everyone ready for the biggest fantasy week of the year. Fantasy championships. Hopefully you guys made it. Thanks for watching us and making it this far. If you have not made it, there will be better luck ahead. But first, here is the league news. So the Saints, they moved on from Blake Grupe a few weeks ago, and they found a new kicker in Charlie Smith, and they have been leaving him on the practice squad and elevating him for game days. But now they have signed him to a new 3-year deal. Upon reading this the first time, I felt it was very strange because considering Blake Grupe was the kicker of the future just a few weeks ago, we didn't know this was going to happen. Why the 3-year deal? And my gut tells me that this replaces the 3 years of uncertainty when it comes with the restricted free agent market. And this will allow the Saints to budget for a kicker as well as give Charlie a home for 3 years as long as he performs. Because as we know with kickers, they do not always perform and they all get moved off of at some point. We saw this last week that Jake Elliott, I've even seen Brandon Aubrey in the last few weeks have some kicking woes, and it happens to the best of them. There comes the end of a career for all kickers. But hopefully this 3-year deal works out for both sides and we see the end of it. Speaking of 3-year deals, the Jaguars also signed extended Jakobi Meyers to a 3-year extension worth $60 million. I think 40 of it is guaranteed. So that keeps him with the Jaguars, which they did acquire him mid-season, through 2028. As long as, the guarantees run out in 2027, so it is always possible that it's 2 years and we'll see. But I know I was talking to Alex offline, and the Jaguars seem to have some comfort here with Jakobi Meyers, Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, and I know Alex believes that they will transition Travis Hunter to cornerback almost full time. I, on the other hand, believe that they could explore trading either Parker Washington or Brian Thomas Jr., because I don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is quite the fit that he was with Mac Jones. So we'll see who's correct on that. But a good signing and a good deal for the Jaguars, because that is a $20 million a year receiver. Like, those don't really grow on trees, especially ones that produce like Jakobi does. All right, let's hop over to the Week 16 recap. And in this, we do have a bunch of folks going on IR, and it's that time of the year. Like, if you have a 2 or 3 week injury and there's only 2 weeks left, we are going to put you on IR and give another player a chance to showcase themselves for 2026. So we have the Rams at the Seahawks here in our Week 16 recap kickoff, and that was an amazing game to start the week. And Alex and I both picked the Rams. Unfortunately, Seattle pulls the overtime comeback with a 2-point conversion to win 38-37. Stafford threw for 457 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it was not enough. I do need to apologize to anyone that I might have scared with the weather. I know I went a different direction myself, and I was telling them that with Jason Myers, and I believe he had 2 fantasy points on the night, so it worked out for me. But if you bench Stafford and you didn't play him, it really did not work out for you. And that's in large part because of Puka Nacua, who had an insane game of 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. So big game for Puka. And it was an Adams-less game, so maybe Adams will be back soon. I mean, the Rams are missing him, of course, and that might have been the difference in this game here. Darnold, though, we got to flip the other side here to the Seahawks. He put out a rough first half, and he managed to put it behind him. He did not see ghosts that he's previously seen, and he was able to put it behind him to lead game tying and game winning drives. And that to me was really good to see. He's also the first quarterback in NFL history to lead 2 different teams in back-to-back seasons to 12-win seasons. So he's in a league of his own. And it's good to see a first-round pick living up to his hype after all of the anti-Sam Darnold talk with the Jets and even with the Carolina Panthers. All right. And Ken Walker here had a huge game on only 11 carries. Felt like he was taking over this game, so it does feel like they should have used him more, but they did not. And JSN was held scoreless in the first, but he ends up putting up a 96 and 1 touchdown effort, and he scored the game winner. I don't really know how to call it because it was essentially a touchdown that tied it, but they went for 2 instead of 1. So kind of crazy. There was also a crazy 2-point conversion in this matchup here where Sam Darnold threw the ball backwards, hit the defender, bounced forwards, and it was recovered by the Seahawks, and they were awarded 2 points for that play. What I would like to see happen is the rules committee look at this and figure out how to close this loophole, because I don't really want to see scrums on plays like this. So I would like them to employ the 4th quarter rule, where if the fumbling player fumbles it forward, in any way, shape, or form, doesn't matter if it bounces off somebody, the fumbling player can recover it and have it count. So if Charbonnet recovers it, it wouldn't count. Darnold would have to recover it since he's technically the one that fumbled it. All right. Brighter things ahead for us here in the picks, though. The Eagles at the Commanders were our next game here, and we both picked the Eagles, and it was a close game early on. The Eagles fumbled the opening kickoff, which was pretty insane, but Philly won easily 29-18. Hurts throws for 2 touchdowns, but only 185 yards passing. I think that the Eagles will be a pretty easy out this year. In the playoffs, they are going to the playoffs, as we'll find out a little bit later. But in this one here, Saquon Barkley had 21 carries for over 100 yards. This is good to see. This is one of their winning formula pieces that need to happen for them to win. And A.J. Brown stays hot, falling 5 yards short of 100. So whatever happened mid-season where he complained, he got his way, and it worked. Now, if we flip the page here to 2026, where will A.J. Brown go in drafts? That is a great question, and I think he'll go too high in drafts again if he's an Eagle or if he's with another team, because I think he's proven the last 2 seasons that he can disappear for stretches. A.J. Brown will be a stay away from me. I kind of learned my lesson on him last year, so I kind of stayed away from him this year. It didn't work out the second half of the year, but the first half of the year, it looked like a fire take. And for the Commanders side here, the Commanders are just done for the year. They've already set Jaden Daniels for the season. But Marcus Mariota was injured here. He was tested for a concussion and a hand injury, and he just didn't return. And it does look like the Commanders will go with Josh Johnson in week 17. So not good on that front either. They're kind of limping towards the finish line. And hopefully there's better things ahead next year. They really do need to retool and figure out what path they're going to take to help Jaden Daniels going forward. All right, next up is the Packers at the Bears. And in this one here, Alex picked the Packers. I picked the Bears. Another stellar overtime game is won by the Bears, 22-16. They had a walk-off touchdown. And this was all in part because Jordan Love was knocked out early with a concussion. He is questionable for the upcoming week, but I do think Malik Willis filled in pretty good overall. There's nothing that he did bad. There's nothing that made him look like a backup or someone that shouldn't be in that spot. He definitely performed. And Emmanuel Wilson got more carries than a banged up Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is one that we're going to have to keep an eye on because it does look like his injury might have gotten a little bit worse last week. So he may or may not play in the championship weekend. But even if he does play, this would be a player that I would advise looking in a different direction on. And I know that's not easy because he was a end of the first, beginning of the second pick this year. So those are not the easy guys to bench ever, especially in a championship game. These are the guys that you drafted to win you a championship. So don't expect a ton of run for him this week against the Ravens. And then we flip over to the Bears side. Caleb Williams heats up late in this matchup, and he has another throw of the year candidate again to DJ Moore. So that's 2 weeks in a row. There was one Houdini throw last week that I just don't understand how he got it through the defenders to Moore. Moore ended up with it, and it was a touchdown. And here was a over 50-yard bomb right in Moore's hands. Like he didn't even have to try to adjust for this catch. This catch was dropped on a dime to him, and I anticipate DJ Moore to be a big part of the playoff push. And he's somebody that in the offseason that I would consider a trade candidate. So, and then they would roll with Odunze and Burden, and we will see. But DJ Moore makes the most sense to be a trade candidate, gain some draft capital, and shed some salary and see what you can do. But DJ Moore, since we're talking about him, only had 51 yards until that last play. That last play padded his stat sheet, and I think that is also food for thought on the trade front because DJ Moore was so underutilized when Odunze and Burden were out in this game. So he's already not part of their overall game plan. He was part of their overtime game plan, but he makes pretty good money, and I can't see them paying him much longer when they have a first and a second round rookie wide receiver. Actually, might be both first rounds. Actually, no, first and a second. And that is about it on that matchup. And our next matchup here was the Bills at the Browns. We both picked the Bills, and the Bills were taken to the brink by the Browns, but do win 23-20. And Josh Allen was banged up at the end of the first half in this one. He got x-rays at halftime, but he did end up playing in the second half. I'm a little concerned about him in championship week as well. They play the Eagles, and he's banged up, so they may go with a more conservative game plan, especially since the Eagles' defensive line is a little bit banged up as well. So I don't know exactly what that'll look like. Maybe they'll go with more screen passes too. But Josh Allen's someone that I'm a little more concerned about when it comes to playing in championship weekend. And as I mentioned, James Cook had a great game in this one. And Shedeur Sanders had a great game going until he got injured. He injured his pinky, and he had to come, and it was gushing blood, and he had to come back and have a bandage on it. So I don't know how that affected his play. Another thing that did affect his play is Quinshon Judkins had a season-ending broken leg. It was pretty disgusting. He had a dislocated ankle as well. He's already underwent successful surgery on that. They anticipate 6 months for a full recovery on that, so that puts him back by training camps next year. So he's someone that should be in the conversation for a second or third round pick in 2026. He will be someone that it'll be interesting to see how his projections come out in about a month for me, because I'll be working on those towards the end of January. And we have Harold Fannin Jr. had 2 scores, one on the ground and one through the air. It seems like he took the goal line back duties as soon as Judkins went out. So kudos to everyone that started Harold Fannin in leagues this week and had the guts to do it, especially in the semis. He's another one that I'm interested to see what a projection might look like for him, with Shedeur Sanders being the quarterback as of right now for all of 2026. So fully cop that might change during the draft or during free agency or during the trade period. But as of right now, I expect Shedeur Sanders to be the starter in 2026. And I'm not sure if Alex would agree with that or not, but we should ask him next week on that. And we'll have another game under our belt, so there might be new information, good or bad, to consider for that. All right. So we have the Bengals at the Dolphins up next. And we both picked the Bengals. The Bengals did win this matchup 45-21. It was a complete blowout. Does not seem like the Dolphins were particularly interested in playing in this one. And they were taken to the woodshed by Burrow, who was much better with Higgins in. Higgins actually played. He got cleared from concussion protocol after 2 concussions. And Chase was peppered with targets in this one. But Burrow throws for 4 touchdowns. And I believe only one of those went to Higgins and Chase combined. And it went to Higgins. So Chase Brown looked like the stud that everyone drafted in the second round this year. Too little, too late. I don't know how many people had Chase Brown in a semifinals matchup, but he ended up scoring 3 total touchdowns. He'll be an interesting case for next year. I know Alex was very big on Taj Brooks. And Taj Brooks has been on a milk carton this year, so I don't know if they plan on incorporating him next year or going with a new back. Also don't know. I mean, I've beat the drum on this. Joe Burrow playing elsewhere, I don't believe is fully off the table. Told Alex this week that I believe it's 40-60 that Joe Burrow's traded. And yes, that means I still think that he'll be with the team next year. But when he came back from injury fast to help the team, my thought was around 10% or less. So you'll see that we're getting closer to the brink, and I believe that it happens at some point. He very well could have been up for his 3rd comeback player of the year next year. I don't know if that'll be the case considering he came back this year. He kind of ruined it for himself and didn't allow himself to win the award for the 3rd time, which would have been probably embarrassing as a player. But speaking of a player that had some embarrassing moments here, we had Quinn Ewers, or Ewers, I believe is exactly how you pronounce it. He had a very up and down first start. Hopefully he improves on that. I do notice that he has a better arm than Tua, so I mean there's that. But he needs some of the confidence and the timing in order to take the next step on Tua. So and Tua's an interesting person too to speculate what his 2026 could look like. Does he have a place in the league? Is it with the Dolphins? Or do they cut or trade him? There's a lot of questions surrounding the quarterback position for the Dolphins. They did come out with a report before the game that I believe from NFL Network, and they were stating that Mike McDaniel was more likely than not to stay this year. So we'll see if there was any change with this. Also, a report from ESPN that the Dolphins back in 2020, I believe, offered 4 first-round picks for Joe Burrow, and I wonder if both teams wish that got done now, because Cincinnati really hasn't done much with Joe Burrow since then. They may have made a Super Bowl appearance after that. I don't recall the timeline of when that Super Bowl appearance took place, and the Dolphins might have been in a better place with a Joe Burrow leading the way, and the Bengals might have been better with the 4 first-round picks, to be honest. All right, so let's hop over to a game here of 2 irrelevant teams, one surprising, one not surprising. The Chiefs at the Titans. I picked the Chiefs. Alex picked the Titans. Chiefs ran out of steam in this one, fall to the Titans 6-9. Embarrassing loss by the Chiefs. Minshew was knocked out early. The early diagnosis came back as a torn ACL. It was confirmed that his ACL was intact, and it was a knee injury bad enough to put him on a season-ending IR, as we had mentioned here. It's going to be a theme. His teammate, Rashee Rice, also put on season-ending IR with 2 games left. So I know that there were people in the championship that were considering starting Rashee Rice. Obviously, we don't do that now. His projection and where people draft him next year is going to be an interesting case study as well, because I think that given the results of this year, he started off very hot when he came back from his suspension, and he cooled off considerably, to the point of, I think that there was no value in where he was drafted, even with the suspension. And that's what folks were counting on when they drafted him, is okay, 4, 6, 8 game suspension, he'll come back and light the world on fire. He did light the game on fire for 2 weeks, and then he cooled right off pretty quickly. I think he had one more good game in there. But Pollard goes over the century mark again for the Titans. And I wish Alex was on the podcast this week, because I wanted to talk a little bit about Iomanner and DK. Are they a potential 1-2 duo, or more likely a 2-3 duo? And I'm kind of leaning towards a 2-3 duo, because neither one of them screams alpha to me. So it does seem like the Titans would need alpha or a veteran wide receiver presence. They could still grow, so that it will fully cop to that. There's just nothing between Ward, DK, and Iomanner that screams that they're on the way to the next thing. But they did beat the champs from 2 years ago, so they do have that to hang their hat on. All right, next matchup here is the Chargers at the Cowboys. We both picked the Chargers. The Chargers kept up with the offensive juggernaut that is the Dallas Cowboys. They won the game 34-17, so they doubled them up. And Herbert has a great day, throwing for 300 yards, which is pretty impressive because he hasn't done that a ton this year. But very good game by Herbert. Hampton gets going as the lead back, so we'll see if that continues. I expect it to. Vidal was injured in this game. I don't know how serious it is and how much time he'll miss, but I do know Harbaugh likes to run a 1-2 punch, so I expect Haskins to be back in the lineup with Hampton if that is the case. And on the Well, one more thing for the Chargers here. We have Quentin Johnston displaying some great hands. I wanted to get Alex's feedback on that because it does seem like he's actually put in some real work this year, and he has caught some balls that are not easy to catch, and he's not sure. He's not doing his normal Johnston items. He did have 104 yards and a touchdown in this game. George Pickens wakes up for the Cowboys and he does 7 catches, 130 yards, and a touchdown. So he's back on track, and I do expect him to get the franchise tag this offseason. So that's my projection, whatever you want to call it, for this upcoming off season. All right. You'll notice a lot of these games have little or no value in fantasy or even in the playoff standings right now. And that's one of the games here. It's the Vikings at the Giants. We both picked the Vikings, and the Vikings won it 16-13. And JJ McCarthy is injured again. He hurt his hand. You could see him grimacing on the sideline as they touched his hand, the trainers. And I fully anticipate him not playing this week. And now this is his third big-ish injury. So, I mean, obviously the knee was the first big one where he missed all of last year. He had the ankle, which was questionable if it was as bad as they were saying, because you watched him hop out of the way, no problem. And you watch Carson Wentz go out there with a shoulder sling on and his shoulder barely hanging on. So there is that. I think at the very least they're going to bring in competition for JJ McCarthy this upcoming year. And Jordan Mason was knocked out of this game, and Aaron Jones operates as the bell cow, who did leave the game briefly too with an injury, but he did come back. Jordan Mason will not play this upcoming week, and so I expect a lot of Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones' career has to be winding down. 2026, I would project, is probably his last year as a 1-2 running back. Maybe he'll continue as a 3 or a special third down back, something like that. But we will see there. Justin Jefferson leads with 85 yards, but most of it was from Max Brosmer. Be interesting to see if Max Brosmer starts this week. Still think you got to start Jefferson. Unfortunately, it hasn't been a great season. He's been peppered with targets, though, and they're still trying to get him to the 1,000-yard mark, so I do expect that to happen. On the other side here, this is getting ugly for the Giants. Jackson Dart throws for 33 yards. He has completely regressed since the Dable firing. And I think the Giants desperately, not the Giants, I should rephrase this. I think Jackson Dart desperately needs to win in week 17 in a winnable matchup against the Raiders, because his job is slipping through his fingers. If the Giants were in a race right now, there's no question that Jameis Winston would be the best option to start. That's a problem for Jackson Dart, and they are protecting him so much now that he's throwing for 33 yards, so he doesn't run. I mean, that's basically what they're doing. And if they got the first pick in the draft, I would be very tempted to pick a quarterback there and dangle Jackson Dart out there for a potential first and maybe another pick. So, no, there's going to be teams that would probably believe in Jackson Dart, but the Giants need something, a spark here, and it's just gone. Maybe he'll end up somewhere with Dable. You never know if Dable gets another job. We're getting really close to Black Monday, so we're about 10 days away from that, and we'll see if Dable gets a job after that, and then maybe he tries to get Jackson Dart, because I think he's the one that tried to pull for Jackson Dart, and there was a different energy with Dable in that locker room and being Jackson Dart's biggest cheerleader. And Scattaboo too, of course. So don't get me wrong there. Scattaboo added to the chemistry, and then you have Neighbors, but there's just something that doesn't feel right with Jackson Dart right now in the Giants. So keep your eye on that. He could be somewhere else in 2026 as long as they can recoup what they paid for him. All right. The Jets at the Saints, another matchup that just doesn't matter really much for fantasy or for real life. Alex and I picked the Saints. The Saints won this matchup for their third straight win after two divisional matchups, but they won 29-6. So this was a pretty big win for them. Brady Cook for the Jets isn't an NFL option as a starter or backup, in my opinion. He might be like a low end backup, so like close to the 60 to 65 range of quarterbacks in the league. Tyler Shuck has looked great, and he should be the 2026 guy. I do think that they should move on from Kamara, give Neal a shot, and maybe draft another back. It's probably time to move off Kendre Miller, too. That's been a bad experiment because he's just been injured time and time again. So I think it's just time. And he's been in the doghouse a few times as well. And Shucks, his connection with Olave has looked really good. And I would be surprised if they don't resign Olave in the offseason. I mean, the franchise tag is always an option, but I think both want to stay together. So expect that to happen maybe before free agency begins. But they're going to have to pay him. And I think he's probably worth, at this age, he's probably worth a little bit more than Jacoby Myers. So look for the $25 million range right now because he really hasn't performed as that elite one to earn that $30,000 or $30 million paycheck, 30,000. So I expect like a $25 million a year deal somewhere in there. Maybe 27 would be the tops. And he should take it to stay there to see if he can grow with Shuck. All right. So after two meaningless matchups, we have the Buccaneers at the Panthers for the NFC South on the line here. I picked the Panthers. Alex picked the Buccaneers. And the Panthers took control of the South by winning 23-20. Bucks tried to run the Panthers to death. They did 33 rushes to 26 passing yards. And I saw a quote from their head coach that this is what worked on them last year. And he didn't do his research clearly because the Panthers defense is one of the top in the league for rushing right now. So if he had done some research, maybe he would have rethought this and they would have won, but they did not look great in this matchup. They are 7-6. And they have the Dolphins on deck. So if the Buccaneers lose to the Dolphins this week and the Panthers beat the Seahawks this week, the South is all wrapped up before week 18. If one of those does not happen, week 18 is the Panthers at the Buccaneers, and that will be for the South. And to my point here, the Buccaneers do have great wide receivers, but they do not use them right now. So they have Evans, Godwin, McMillan, and Abuka, and they're just not using them. So what's the point of having four great receivers if you're not going to use them? And the Panthers took the opposite approach in this one. They rushed 20 times, they passed 32 times. Not a ton of great stuff from Bryce Young in the offense, but enough to get the win. Jatavian Sanders with the game-winning touchdown with 4 minutes left, and the Buccaneers were driving to tie it up, and Baker Mayfield threw an interception when him and his wide receiver were not on the same page. He threw left, the receiver went right, and the miscommunication allowed an interception to happen, and the Panthers to ice the game. So, as I said, week 18 will likely be the scenario that I expect the most likely to happen here will be for the South. So, Buccaneers need to get their act together fast. Next up, Falcons at the Cardinals. Alex picked the Falcons, I picked the Cardinals, and the Falcons won 26-19. This is another meaningless game for real life, but there were some fantasy implications qualifications here. We had Bijan Robinson and Algier split 50-50 at carries. Algier was more efficient. Keep reminding everyone that Algier is a free agent at the end of this year, so it will be interesting to see if he stays or if he goes and tries to be a lead back somewhere else, because he's never going to be the lead back in Atlanta. But Bijan does lead through the air in this one, so he more than ate. So if you start a Bijan, you're more than happy. He is a bell cow back in this league. I just don't know if they'll ever give him 100 or 80% of the touches. So I think they'll always need a back to kind of split those ancillary rushes. And for the Cardinals, this felt like a very weird game. It didn't feel like they were getting Trey McBride and Michael Wilson and Harrison involved, but Michael Wilson with 3 targets with an insane touchdown catch, and Harrison only had 3 targets as well. I think the Jacoby Brissett Cinderella story is turning into a pumpkin right now, so it worked for a bit. He looked really good. He looked like one of the league-leading passers. Not an elite passer, but I think the Cardinals are at 3 wins right now, and not good for considering how they started the year. Next up is the Jaguars at the Broncos. This was probably the most heated battle between Alex and myself this week. I picked the Jaguars. He picked the Broncos. Jaguars best the Broncos at Mile High, and it was 34-20. So the Jaguars' 26-point streak goes up one more. I believe they're at like 8 right now, and it includes the Texans and the Broncos now. So I think we really need to start looking at their offense being legitimate, and we need to start treating them as such. And we have Trevor Lawrence throwing for another 3 touchdowns, and he ran for one. He's been electric late. He's if people had the guts to start him in fantasy leagues, he's probably winning folks fantasy leagues, and I don't know who would have the guts to start him against the Broncos, but kudos if you're out there. Parker Washington was his weapon of choice in this one. Had a pretty cool touchdown catch, if everyone saw it. But this was not an easy matchup. Jacoby Myers seems like the one that they were taking away. And then obviously Brian Thomas, there's just something not fully right there. So we'll see if the Broncos can bounce back going forward, as Bo Nix has an up and down day. They abandoned the rush early, and even when the game was close, they still didn't feel like they had a great rush game, and that's going to be a problem as they enter the playoffs. And their number 1 seed is in jeopardy, and I don't think it'll be in jeopardy with this upcoming week, but their week 18 matchup is against the Chargers, and that will be for the division. So they might lose the 1 seed and the division in the last week of the year, as long as the Chargers can win in week 17 and keep it within 1 game. All right. So speaking of the Chargers' opponent, the Texans, we have the Raiders at the Texans up next. We both picked the Texans, and the Texans were taken also to the brink like the Bills were earlier by the Raiders, and they won 23-21. So less than a field goal, and they were 14.5-point favorites. They definitely underperformed in this matchup. They let Genty go off for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So easily Genty's best performance as a rookie. And he has to be back in the conversation for Rookie of the Year after this performance. There's probably Genty and Tet and maybe Abuka. I mean, Abuka could tear it up in the last 2 weeks and potentially win it as well. So that would be my 3 that I'd be looking at for Rookie of the Year. And the Texans' offense regressed against a pretty easy opponent, so that's pretty scary to see. And one more note about the Raiders, they put Brock Bowers on IR, so he will be out the last 2 weeks. I know there's folks that were counting on him to play in the championship. So you're going to have to look elsewhere and potentially even drop Brock Bowers, which feels sacrilegious considering he was a high pick this previous year. All right. So hopefully better days ahead for the Texans, and they'll have to get their act together really quickly because the Chargers are up and the Chargers are kind of on a pretty big win streak. All right. Got 3 more games to go over. We have the Steelers at the Lions. We both picked the Lions thinking that they were going to play like their backs were up against the wall, but the Steelers win a thriller 29-24. There was a great play to end the game. There was actually 2. The first one was a pass interference by Tesla, and that called back a touchdown that went to St. Brown. And secondly, there was a short pass by Goff, which ended up in offensive pass interference because St. Brown pushed the defender to get open. And as St. Brown was going down to the ground, he lateraled the ball to Goff, and Goff actually scored. Although, if I'm being honest here, to the letter of the law, I would have said that forward progress had stopped and the game should have been over before the lateral. They let the game play a little bit, and the OPI was accepted because it was an offensive penalty to end the game. There was not another play. An offensive play penalty can end the game. But Warren and Gainwell controlled the game for the Steelers, over 100 yards each. DK Metcalf had a run-in with the fans. He was suspended for the final 2 regular season games of the year. Shouldn't be too big of a deal for the Steelers because they should be able to make the postseason by just defeating the Browns this week. But DK, this is a pretty big deal for him. His guarantees of $45 million are voided, so he is at jeopardy of being cut or traded, and we will see what route the Steelers go in, especially if Aaron Rodgers follows through with his plans to retire. So if he doesn't follow through with his plans to retire, I would expect DK back. If he does retire and they don't have a quarterback again, we could be in a position here of what's the point of keeping a potentially unhappy DK Metcalf, and why pay him all that money? Jared Goff had a great stat line, but he didn't look good. I know that doesn't always make sense, but if you watch the game, he did not look comfortable. He looked slower going through his progressions, and he didn't put all of the balls in the best possible placement for his receivers. Have to wonder if Goff, as he's aging here, if how long he'll last in the NFL. And that's not a dig at him because he's had some great years with Ben Johnson. So this could be part of the downfall is no Ben Johnson as well. All right. So Detroit only ran the ball 11 times for 16 yards. That's not enough when you have Jahmyr Gibbs. And Detroit, I think, has like less than 1% of making the playoffs. So they'd have to win out, and the Packers would have to lose out, and they play the Ravens next. So speaking of the Ravens, we have the Patriots at the Ravens Sunday Night Football. Alex picked the Patriots. I picked the Ravens. I thought the Ravens would have a great game because their backs were against the wall, as I was mentioning with the Steelers, being able to clinch the division. But it was a turnover, an injury-laden game that resulted in a Patriots victory 28-24. And the Patriots overcame a 15-point deficit to win this game. So they were down, and they were down with a backup quarterback in Baltimore with Tyler Snoop Huntley. So we'll get to why that happened in a minute here. But Drake May had an up and down game with turnovers, but he did correct it as the game went on, and he performed when it counted, and that is what we like to see. Did not like to hear the MVP chants for him, especially in Baltimore Stadium. He is a distant second or third from Stafford for me right now, so there was also MVP chants after Stevenson scored a rushing touchdown, which felt really weird as well. So I don't really get it, but chanting MVP does not make him an MVP. He could be the MVP of his team and not of the league. Henderson was injured in this one, and that's why Stevenson was getting so much carry, and he did not return. They signed Elijah Mitchell this week, so I don't anticipate Henderson to be ready this upcoming week against the Jets. Patriots have to win their last two games. Bills have to hope that the Patriots lose one of their last two games, and Bills have to win their last two games to win the AFC East. So that's still up for grabs, especially when they play the Dolphins in week 18. I think that's more likely than the Jets in week 17. All right. Stefon Diggs took an active leadership role in this game, and you could really see it on the sideline. Loved it. And he performed on the field too. 138 yards. And on the Ravens side, Lamar Jackson was injured, did not return with a bad back, and I don't anticipate him playing this upcoming week against the Packers, which would effectively eliminate the Lions. So Derrick Henry had a crucial game on multiple fronts here. He fumbled early, and that led to points for the Patriots, and it seemed like there was a soft benching of Henry, a lot more Keaton Mitchell, but after Lamar was hurt, they did put him back in. He rebounds. He actually took over the game, and he had 128 yards and 2 touchdowns total, and he did not see a carry the last few drives for the Ravens, and I think that was a huge mistake by the Ravens, so it could have cost them their season. All right, so we have just one more matchup to go over this week, and it is the 49ers at the Colts. And Alex and I both picked the 49ers, and Old Man Rivers turns back the clock, but it is not enough, and the 49ers do end up winning 48-27. The fact that they gave up 27 points to Rivers is a little concerning, especially at home. Rivers, as I said, turned back the clock. He managed to throw for 277, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and Alec Pierce caught both touchdowns. I do expect to see Alec Pierce back for a contract extension next year, and it is a little telling to me that Anthony Richardson is not being considered to start these weeks, and they're going with 44-year-old Philip Rivers instead. His throws still do not look great. He's wheeling as best as he can, and he had most of his family in San Francisco, so that was kind of cool. Brock Purdy in this one was the star. He threw for 5 touchdowns, and I'm not one to compliment Brock Purdy very often, but this has to be one of the best stretches of his career, and he had some shaky games this year. I mean, I have no other way to put it, but he's rebounded from them, and he has put the 49ers in a position where if they win out, that they could be the 1 seed in the NFC. So that is a possibility. It's on the table right now. I don't know if it's likely, but it is possible. So they'd have to beat the Bears this upcoming week, and then they have to beat the Seahawks in the finale. So, and that could be for the 1 seed. Kind of crazy. The 1 seed in the AFC could be up for grabs as well, but the Colts could only take the Texans spot now in the playoffs, and it's very small chance. So they'd have to beat the Jaguars. Texans would have to lose to the Chargers. And then luckily for Indy, they control their destiny in week 18 if both of those things happen, where they play the Texans. So all they have to do is win and in. So possible, but we will see. They're going to start Rivers this upcoming week, but they might already be eliminated this week. So we will see. And then if they're eliminated, do they continue to start Rivers? And if they do, what's the benefit? Because I don't anticipate him ever playing with another team or the Colts after this year. So I don't think he could go through a full training camp or a full season. I think the short stretch was perfect for Rivers. And I do think that he probably wishes that he would be in a little bit better football shape, but he's doing great for what he is right now. All right, so that does it for week 16. That is in the books. We only have 2 weeks left. Man, this season has flown by, and we got to get you ready with the week 17 primer. And we get kicked off with a triple header on Thursday. So we have the Colts at, let me try this again. We have the Cowboys at the Commanders, and Alex and I are both going with the Cowboys. So don't anticipate Josh Johnson to be any good in this game, so the Cowboys could run away with it. I don't know what incentive the Cowboys have to put up a ton of offensive points, but got to start your studs like CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott and even George Pickens and Javonte Williams, which be interesting to see where Javonte ends up in 2026. Could be back with the Cowboys, or it could be moving on to a new team. All right, second matchup of our Christmas Day triple header is the Lions at the Vikings. And again, we swept this one here with myself and Alex picking the Lions. Vikings don't have much to play for. It could be Max Brosmer starting, or I believe they picked another guy up off of practice squad. And we will see. We will see, but I don't anticipate this being a close game. I anticipate the Lions keeping their playoff hopes slightly alive. The last matchup of the Thursday night triple header is the Broncos at the Chiefs, and Alex and I again swept it with the Broncos in this one. I expect the Broncos to have a massive bounce back. No idea who's going to start quarterback for the Chiefs, and I know they're trying to get Travis Kelce 1,000 yards, and I anticipate this to be Travis Kelce's last season in the NFL. So he's starting to speak like his time is coming to an end. He's saying the Chiefs instead of we, and there's language things that he's doing that are pointing towards that. So we'll see if that's true or not in the upcoming months. So he anticipates making a decision by free agency. So enjoy him while he is still playing. All right. We are down to some playoff implication games here on Saturday. We have a doubleheader on Saturday. So this is kind of a weird week where we have multiple days of games. And the first one here is the Texans at the Chargers. This game probably should have been the last game of the day in primetime, but that's hindsight. And Alex is going the Texans, and I am going the Chargers. So this is going to be our first difference of the week. I just don't know if the Texans can score enough to beat the Chargers. So they could prove me wrong in this game. This would be a good game for them to get right in, and a good team to get a win against two playoff teams here, in my opinion. So, but again, if the Texans somehow fumble against the Chargers and the Colts beat the Jaguars, which we're going to go over in a little bit, then the last week would be for that seventh and final playoff spot. So there's some good matchups in that last week. We mentioned that NFC South matchup, so we will see on that front. Next matchup here to close out Saturday is the Ravens at the Packers, and Alex and I both swept it with the Packers. We do have to see, this could be a Huntley versus Willis game. Nothing that I saw coming. So this was supposed to be Lamar versus Love, and we're not there. But the Packers win this. They're in. They would eliminate the Lions. This would be the bow. I just don't think that the Ravens can win without Lamar right now. So pretty big loss. I think there's a bigger drop down to Huntley from Lamar than there is from Love to Willis. Maybe that's a indictment on Love as well. So we'll have to see going forward. All right, so that closes out Saturday. Now we're down to our Sunday games here. We have the Cardinals at the Bengals, and Alex and I are going to sweep this with the Bengals. And the next matchup is one of the matchups that I've been talking about all podcast long. It's the Jaguars at the Colts. And Alex and I are going to sweep it with the Jaguars. So this would effectively eliminate the Colts and make that Week 18 matchup move. Next up is the Patriots at the Jets. I would love to see the Patriots fumble here. Would love to see the Bills win the East and get a home playoff game, especially as they're closing out Highmark Stadium. But we're both going to go the Patriots in this one. Can't take the Jets because they're starting Brady Cook again. Pretty much, it almost makes Breece Hall so ineffective. Like, it really does stink. What they did at the quarterback position this year and let Rodgers walk was, I think, unacceptable. And I think Aaron Glenn's job should be questioned in his performance review at the end of the year. Next up is the Saints at the Titans, both coming off wins. Saints have 3 wins in a row, and Alex and I are predicting a 4th win in a row. So hopefully Tyler Shuck keeps it up, and I'm really excited to see where he goes next year. So we will see. And next up is the Steelers at the Browns. And Alex and I are both going the Steelers. Do want to see what Shedeur adds to his resume in this one. But the Steelers could salt away the entire division this week. So that is something that I do anticipate. All right. When this game rolls around, I would have to look at the standings, but I'm not sure if the Steelers would even have anything to play for in this game. And that could affect how long the starters play. All right. This game here is a heart-brain game, and it's the Seahawks at the Panthers. My heart wants to pick the Panthers. My brain says pick the Seahawks, and we're going to go with the brain. Alex also went the Seahawks in this one. But this is a 1 o'clock game, 10 a.m. body clock time for the Seahawks, so very possible that they could drop this game. So hopefully this game's much closer than it looks, but this is a Sam Darnold revenge game. So maybe you start Sam Darnold this week. All right. I know I've had Jordan Love and Sam Darnold in one league, and I've started the absolute wrong quarterback all season long. Cost me high points. Cost me a trip to the fantasy championship, and it's got me reevaluating next year what I want to do at quarterback. Do I just want one stud, or do I want to have a rotation like I had this year? So definitely options. All right, so we have up next the Buccaneers at the Dolphins. Again, I would love for the Dolphins to pull off the upset here. What is really interesting is the Buccaneers are 7-8, and the Dolphins are only 1 win behind them at 6-9. So it's not even out of the realm of possibilities, because if the Panthers win and if the Dolphins win, the Panthers have the division all wrapped up and they can rest their starters in week 18. So if even one of those outcomes don't happen, then week 18 will be for the division. But Alex and I are both going the Buccaneers in this matchup. Hopefully they get their passing game going. That's what I'm looking forward to most. But we will see. Next up is the Giants at the Raiders. And this could be the game to get the number 1 pick. So the loser might go on to the number 1 pick out of these 2 games here, out of these 2 teams. And Alex is going the Brock Bowers Raiders, and I am going the Giants. And I think both sides are a huge risk. I do think Ashton Jeanty might be the most talented guy on both offenses, so Alex does have a leg to stand on there. But I do believe in the Giants defense to be able to stop the Raiders, so I believe in their front to be able to stop Geno, especially without a target like Brock Bowers. Who's he really throwing to other than Ashton Jeanty? So another difference there. So that's 2 differences. So we have the Chargers-Texans difference, and we have the Raiders-Giants difference so far. Next up is the Eagles at the Bills, and we have our 3rd difference here. I'm going the Bills, and he's going the Eagles. And I can see both sides in this matchup. Josh Allen's banged up. Will he be able to get the W for his team at home? I think he will. And we will see what the outcome is here. I think the Bills could run it on the Eagles. But the Eagles could very well run it on the Bills too, so we'll see. All right, we are down to our Sunday night matchup, which is probably the matchup of the week in my opinion, because this has some number one seed, high seed implications here, and it's the Bears at the 49ers. Alex and I are going both with the home team 49ers, so this is a game where I could see a lot of overs hit. So if you do like to bet, I could see a lot of overs hit in this one because I could see both teams playing very hard on offense, and I'm not sure that the defenses can stop them. Obviously would help if the 49ers are able to play Kittle, so still to be determined. If you are in the fantasy championship and you do have George Kittle, that's going to be extremely tough unless you have Jake Tonjes and or you could have Loveland or Kmet. So you got to have a backup plan there. I don't know how you bench George Kittle in the championship. All right, last matchup, Monday Night Football. The Rams at the Falcons, and both Alex and I expect the Rams to get back on the winning ways. This could be a higher scoring game as well. The Falcons' offense has been performing as of late, but the Rams here, they get a double win if they win this game. So they win and improve their record, and they lower the Falcons' pick, which they own next year. So this could be a double win game for the Rams. Also, the Falcons might be playing twice as hard because they don't want to give the Rams a high pick. So we will see there. All right. So we hope everyone has a very happy holidays and stays safe and has some time with family and football and friends and food, all the F's. And hopefully I wasn't too boring running the show by myself this week. Alex was off doing some family items, and he should be back with us next week. And that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for downloading or listening to this episode. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps. You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again. Bye, everybody.